Yes.
Hey,
Good
Randy.
morning, everybody, and welcome to Hot Off the Press. Super excited today. I don't know, this guy is a legend, at least to me, he is, and prolific in so many different ways. We're going to touch base on all of it. My man from up north, Mr. Steve Toth. Hello, Stevie.
Hey, Randy, how's it going? Stevie's not one that I usually get, but you know what? You can call me Stevie if you really want to.
Did anybody ever call you Stevie? I never call anybody Stevie. I don't even know where the hell that came out of.
Maybe my grandma. I don't know.
Well, that's great. I guess. Well, don't call my grandma. I would not like that. How are you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Doing good. This is SEO IRL week, so it's a busy
God.
one for me, but
I know.
things are great. Yeah.
I have to tell you, I'm completely honored and flattered that you would come on during a hectic week when I know you've got a conference starting in like 2 days. So
no worries. Yeah, happy to do it. Yeah, we're just working on so much fun stuff at the same time. So balancing, starting doing the conference this week with all the experimentation stuff that we're doing at the same time. It's just another week. But yeah, the conference week especially is a little bit busy. But we're just having fun at the agency, teaching the CXL course in a couple of weeks, and then doing a bunch of speaking as well. So it's just normal to be busy, but I guess just extra busy the week of the conference.
Yeah. You've got so many things going on that I want to touch base on. First, I want to be sure, hey, folks, like, follow, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. If you have any questions or comments that you want to throw at Steve or myself during the show, just throw them in the message or chat box, whatever platform that you're viewing on. Also want to give a shout out to Steve and so much of what he is doing, one of which is, if you have not subscribed to this thing yet, Steve, I have to tell you, one of my favorite things of Tuesday, aside from my own, doing this show, is my weekly digestion of SEO Notebook that hits. And generally, I always love this thing because it generally hits like about 15 minutes or so right before I go live. And so I'm like, oh, here's what Steve's got going on. Anything kind of fun and interesting that I could weave into the show today. And yeah, I'm you were so prolific, and I just have to compliment you on a that you've been doing this SEO Notebook forever, and I'm sure it's grown.
6 years
How long?
6 years.
6 years now, which is, and folks, for any of you who have tried to do something every week, to the extent that like SEO Notebook, or if you're doing a podcast or whatever, I mean, 6 years is a long time. That is a long ass grind. I mean, that is nothing. You just got to celebrate and give some massive props for that, because that is a lot of work. And not just a lot of work to get something out, but I mean, you put out a quality piece of content and something to glean like every week. And I loved what you did. I have it queued up here somewhere. I got to see if I can find it. I love what you did. Where is it? I'm trying to find. I have the
Nope.
God, I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. I have the note from this week that just came out today, I should say, and I had it like queued up to go to watch, because this thing is like, wow. What you did was essentially publish the stuff that you did
For SEO IRL last year.
last year. Right. And you put up all of the slides from last year from all of the speakers, plus all of the stuff that you mentioned in your presentation from last year, all of the different things. I mean, that is like, wow. That was just great.
And I don't know if I don't think you have it up there, Randy, but I also started a second newsletter this year called AInotebook.com as well, which is all
Yes.
about generative.
I think it's on the, I think it's on the notebook, on the note itself is at the bottom of that.
I'm not doing a great job of cross promoting them. But,
I was like, where is it on here, Steve? But yeah, okay.
Yeah,
well,
so it's
a note to self, right?
AInotebook.com. And just, it's funny. Like, well, first of all, thank you for the compliments. I do appreciate that. And, for me, the SEO industry, and now, with all that's happening in AI, is just like something I've kept my finger on the pulse for 15 plus years now. So even well before I was doing SEO Notebook. And, I just love sharing. I love sharing what I'm learning, and I love taking note of what other people are doing as well. And, very much like active in the space like myself, still, working with my team, working with our clients. And, this is where the ideas come from. And, it's just a matter of putting them down. So for me, Notion is the medium, because it's super fast, and I don't publish anything on my own website. It's all inside the newsletter. And just by virtue of being so, got my finger on the pulse of the industry, it doesn't seem like a lot of extra work to just put that into a note this week, and just get into that routine of thinking, what am I going to share this week? And like doing it, for 6 years, a lot of people would be like, wow, that's a lot. But, I would have probably had this stuff to share anyway. But starting a newsletter was the perfect medium for me, because it's fast, it's efficient, it's, you can get your distribution out there. And, every week I'm excited to share. Obviously, like some weeks I'm like, I've got like this amazing thing. And then, other weeks it's like, I'm sharing somebody else's cool thing.
Yeah.
But there's always something. This week on AI Notebook, I actually picked up a tip from Rand Fishkin about how he optimizes and improves his LLM search visibility. And basically, what Rand does is in his bio, he always writes like the makers of fine audience research software. And whenever he goes on a podcast, the bio and all that stuff says the makers of fine audience research software. And
Mm.
he's changed that a couple times to the makers of fine audience research tools and stuff like that. And, it's little tips like that that I pick up on and I publish. And, lo and behold, there's 169 instances of the makers of fine audience research software indexed in Google. And when you ask ChatGPT, best audience research software, their SparkToro is number one. So it's just about having your antennae up all the time.
Right.
And I'm following. I get most of my news these days from LinkedIn. LinkedIn has really been sort of where I think a lot of people have migrated from X and whatnot to share. But it seems like that I'm just always got backup content, always reading other people's things, and just like that specific example is like the perfect kind of example of like, a note, something that's actionable, something that anybody can start doing, and use that in this case to influence LLM results.
That's interesting. You bring up a couple of things I wanted to ask you about as well, which is, well, first of all, in regards to your content, which is amazing. Are you sharing this content? So you have it in your newsletter and through the Notion platform, but are you sharing snippets of that at all, like on X or in LinkedIn as well? Or is your delivery mechanism purely for the things that you share, and you're so gracious in what you share every week, but is it just only in your newsletter in the notebook?
Pretty much. There's some stuff from the older stuff that makes it onto LinkedIn, and I have thought about sharing some stuff on LinkedIn, and I'm not opposed to that. There's a fellow named Andy. Sorry, it's not Andy. Eddie Schlaner, who's a copywriter on. Just on LinkedIn, and he owns a company called Very Good Copy, which is an excellent resource for anybody who's looking to do copywriting. But he and I are in an entrepreneur group together, and he was saying that what he does is he shares his email on LinkedIn like 15 minutes before his email goes out, and then he puts the link to his LinkedIn post inside his email, and then the readers of the email go and like the post, and then help explode that post. So I was thinking about doing something like that, but in the past, I basically teased the note on LinkedIn and then just published it only on the email list, and then not on my website either. But I think the fact that I don't publish on my website also has helped me grow my subscribers, and probably hurt me in some cases where people are like, I just want to see some content, where can I see it easily? But that's just been my thing.
Well, that's what I was kind of curious about, because so many people even kind of hit me up about, how do you build, personal brand? How do you build your brand, and doing different things? And that's why I was wondering about your approach or your strategy because clearly there's value to you. It's an asset, a massive asset, both SEO Notebook and now what you're building with the AI Notebook. So building that subscription base or that subscriber base is really kind of critical for you in building the value of that, because then on your newsletter or in the notebook, sorry, I call it newsletter, but in the notebook, you've got sponsorship. You're also, not necessarily pushing. I never really ever think that you're pushing stuff, but you have opportunities, for folks to go look at some other things, I guess, as well. And but there's value of the subscriber. And that's why, if you're driving people to sign up, I get that. And that's why I was wondering kind of what your strategy was, is you're kind of trying to drive to build, again, that subscriber base. If you're sharing that content on social, would people just kind of hang out on the social, or you're like, hey, here's a little bit, come subscribe?
Well, when I spoke to Eddie about it, his thing was that the people from the list actually like having it in their inbox, and then what it does for him on LinkedIn ends up growing the list. And if you want the content reliably, you'd probably go to the list for that. So it's something that that got me thinking. But my personal brand is I highly encourage everybody to crank that flywheel at the beginning, even though it's much harder to crank it at the beginning. And you get less traction and all that kind of stuff. But once you put in the consistency, and also you have to be confident in terms of what you're sharing is actually providing a lot of value. And people, especially in this industry, are pretty cheap sometimes about if my newsletter was paid, I'm sure some people would subscribe, but I think the expectation of even just exchange of email address for the value that you get, people have high expectations, and you've got to make sure that what you're sharing is enough. And I think for me, the income from sponsorships is really not something that I focus on at all. We make the vast majority of our revenue from working with larger enterprise clients. So that's really what I'm focused on. And I remember when I got into my relationship with my partner, 3 years ago, she kind of looked at me and said, you don't actually talk about that you can hire us, or that we're an agency or anything like that, but you give all of your stuff away, but how does that actually work? And really, I guess the what we're trying to instill in the user, and I don't know if it was a conscious strategy or just something that kind of evolved over time, but we want to just basically just keep hitting home that we have expertise, right? And that if you work with us, we're a lot more innovative than your average agency. And I've had clients come to us and say, my agency was starting to implement your strategies, and I figured, why didn't I just work with you? So, there's for me, it all boils down to this book called The Go-Giver, that is all about offering more in value than what you take in payment, and giving one to many. So the more people you're able to reach, the more people you're able to potentially work with. So I've always had this kind of giver mentality, but at the same time, I haven't just put everything on my website. I've kind of made you give up your email in order to get that. So whether it was it wasn't a conscious master plan, there was no AI consulting, long chat with ChatGPT about the best strategy, this, that, and the other, but it's worked for me for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think clearly it's worked for you. And again, I think it's one of the things that I respect about you the most, aside from just your vast knowledge, but is that giver mentality that you have, because I think the more that, and I subscribe to this, the more you give, the more you'll gain, just out of not, and you're not giving because you're going to gain, but you're just giving, and it just kind of just flows back to you kind of naturally, I think. And but I know I just absolutely appreciate how you give, and I think it's wonderful, and it's a great approach, and really big respect to you for that.
Well, like entrepreneur, just if I can say one other thing about
Yeah,
it, like, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Entrepreneurship, like even when you're successful, it's still about like, there's no guarantees that you're going to get paid next month. Like there's like, even when things are like, doing really well, you're like, okay, well, how long is this going to last? Right. Like,
yeah,
and entrepreneurship, a lot of ups and downs, and hopefully you have more ups, but every time like I ship a piece of content that I'm like really excited about, and there's been many times where I'm like, okay, this is great. Or, especially when it's something that comes from me, like a GPT bot that, I don't know, comes up with linkable asset ideas or helps you do keyword research because it,
right.
anticipates the next question of the searcher, and then, thousands of people use it. I feel like secure. Like I feel like, okay, this is not like, I'm not buying ads and getting leads and calculate how many leads I get and how many closes I get. But I know that if I put something out into the world that like people actually use and people actually share, I actually feel a sense of security in my business when I work hard to do that kind of stuff. And, it's all very indirect, but like that's a big push for me to do that, is like, who can I impact with this? Who can I say like, wow, I learned this from Steve, and have that proliferate an organization. Even if they don't hire me, I know it's just like planting seeds. So there's a sense of security I get in my own entrepreneurial, like, experience, and building of my business when I release really good content.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always have that in the back of my mind as well, that you were saying like, yeah, next month the wheels could fall off. So I'm just going to enjoy, you know, I'll, I don't think it'll happen, but it could. And I recognize that. And so we'll just, try to plan, have a little contingency plan. But entrepreneurship keeps you active, keeps you
Yeah,
young, maybe.
100%.
um, so I want to I thought what I wanted to do with our kind of time here this morning, I wanted to hit on several different things. One, SEO Notebook. Um, I want to talk about IRL as well a little bit. But in between some of these things, I thought maybe what I would do would be as well ask you to share a little bit of maybe a snippet of an idea from one of your notebooks, or a thought or something that you're running with right now. I mean, you've shared so many different things, and I have implemented so many different things that you have instituted in your notebook. Like I even have like some of the custom GPTs, like this lead quiz generator. I have that still. It's sitting in my, chat GPT. You've done so many different things, but I thought, oh, maybe Steve could share a couple of different things, during the hour we got it, and we'll bounce from one, and then we'll talk about IRL, and then we'll come back and bounce on another one. So
For sure. So I think like, one of the big hot topics this year is obviously like, AI search, right?
uh,
Um, and it was again like, launching AI Notebook again this year was like, all right, how do we position ourselves so that we're not going to get left behind when AI mode is the default, and
yeah,
clients start searching AEO or GEO instead of SEO, right? So this is something that we've been really deeply researching since SGE, since ChatGPT search a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And what one of the big things I kind of like hit on was this idea about optimizing your answer for like a question that is a deal breaker to your ICP. So,
mm,
getting found in non-branded search is kind of like one thing. Um, you know, Obviously you want to be found if someone's searching for like best project management software, or now these days, best project management software, budget $20 per person, Gantt charts and time tracking, easy to use, and web-based, like these
right.
types of like long searches that people can now get with AI. And so two of the bots that I created for AI Notebook, kind of get at the root of like helping you identify like what those deal breaker questions are. One is called Brand Skeptic GPT, and I can share these links with you.
Yeah.
But to put in the show notes. But Brand Skeptic GPT kind of simulates the mind of a skeptical buyer who might be, already like kind of in the research phase for you, and then asking, like tough questions about your brand, and actually making sure that you are putting your best foot forward when somebody starts to really get into that low funnel. They've considered a bunch of different companies or products or services that they want to work with, and they're really trying to determine whether or not you are the solution that's like the best fit for them. Looking at things like what are deal breakers for them, what are the really skeptical questions that they're going to ask before they hire your firm or or get your product. And it turns out that ChatGPT is a great use case for this. And, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that when a person is at that low stage of the funnel, that, that the LLMs are representing us and pulling in the information that we really want. Right. So this is great for all kinds of businesses, whether or not you're doing SEO or you're not. Like, for example, we have a wealth management client that, traditionally gets like 95% of their business through referrals. So when somebody is too big for like a Fidelity type of company, they'll say, okay, well, you're not a great fit for us, but here's the names of like 3 wealth management firms. And like now that person who gets those 3 recommendations is going to ChatGPT to ask it a bunch of questions, right? But traditionally, since this business didn't really rely on SEO or, basically any kind of inbound leads, it just relied on these referrals. It didn't have like a ton of information on its website about, how it has answers to these deal breakers and whatnot. And the answers to, that the LLM is getting is like a lot of like, I'm not sure, or, just depending on like something somebody else said or whatever.
Right.
So understanding that there's a couple things, like I'm going into depth, and you can see
that's
go
good.
from one thing to another, but rooted in still like in the deal breakers and those skeptical questions is one of the biggest tips I can really give, is that like know how the LLM is answering those key questions about your business, right?
Yeah.
And B, like make sure that the answers that it sources online to basically source its data are coming from you, right? And not somebody else. So if it's like if you sometimes these SEOs have these contests like who's the most handsome SEO in Canada, and even if you're not optimizing that, there's a good chance there's some internal links to my website, right? Or some links. Just kidding. But like like when Google doesn't have the answer and you're the only page that's optimized for that, that it's gonna pull that information, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing with LLMs. Like if you're a B2B SaaS company and you don't have, your pricing is purely like get a quote, that that information is going to be pulled from Reddit or wherever somebody has put, I pay X dollars a month for this software, right? So, and obviously price being an important deal breaker to many people, making sure that you control what the answer to that deal breaker is, because it's sourcing your website, is extremely important for your long-term defensibility against mistruths kind of making their way into the LLM. And then and we also have that level of control, because we advise our clients to put that information on their website in a way that's like highly retrievable and preferred, right? And just to go an even level deeper on this is like, if you're the LLM, like you don't want to provide inaccurate information to your user, right?
Right.
And one of the best ways for an LLM to prevent that is actually to cite the first party source. But in a lot of cases, like that information is not being cited from the first party source. It's being relied on, third party, like a G2 review or a Reddit thread, or a forum posting on Quora or whatever. But understanding, like, for those important questions, is that information coming from your site? I think it's really, really important.
Hmm. That's really is interesting. I know Joy Hawkins, and she has a great conference called Local U, and she had the live conference. It's just a 1 day, which is kind of fun as well. I like these short SEO conferences. Like, I'm so bummed I'm not going to make it up to IRL. I have a college, well, soon to be college age daughter. She's a senior this year, and this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have a 3 days, three
Cool.
colleges tours all lined up. So, but I was at the Local U, and there was a gentleman that did a presentation there that really kind of talked almost exactly around this kind of line of thinking that you're talking about. He was doing the same kind of thing, like go find out what the LLMs know about your brand, and he gave a number of different prompts to kind of help drive that a little bit, and then as well compare you against your competitors, and to understand how, like on the phrases or on your critical phrases or deal maker phrases, how you stack up against that and what the gap is, and then help drive direction on helping you create content then to fill that gap and or put you as the most prevalent source for the citation on that phrase or that deal maker phrase for you in the LLMs. And it was a great strategy. And I just think, yeah, man, and I would love to see, your kind of custom chat that you're using for that. So
Yeah.
I'll be excited to get that link. We'll drop it in the show.
Yeah, and our agency actually, we're working on tooling that measures whether or not the output is consistent with the answer that you want to give, right? So it's one thing to be like, to kind of do it and, just kind of have a general spidey sense about how things are, but like it's another thing to actually, have these important questions and then grade them against an answer that you would ideally give.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the other really important insights that we've made from, doing this work is that an LLM can still get it right, but like if you ask a question about a specific brand, but it might, when you look at the sources that it used to get it right, it was very distributed throughout the website, right? Like it sourced like 17 different pages to say, all your integrations, for example, as SaaS.
Right.
But if the fewer number of pages that can act as the source for that, the more likely you are then to be retrieved when somebody has a much longer string, like the question I asked, for example, on project management software, $20 a head, Gantt charts, time tracking, all that kind of stuff. If your like product truths are too difficult for the LLM to fetch for like a non-branded query where it's got to like answer, a bunch of different questions, you're not likely to be recommended for that. But if your answers to those deal breaker questions are well, like properly consolidated on your website, very clearly in a passage talked about that that's not an issue for your company, that you satisfy that deal breaker question very well. When a person has a much longer string of questions, which is, I think the future is like, these unpredictable, super long prompts that, we really don't have that is just going to like has already reshaped our industry,
Right.
and is only going to continue more. If your deal breaker answers are too scattered across your website and not very retrievable, you're not going to get the support you need when somebody is saying, compare this one software to another on these 4 features, right?
Mm.
Your information is just not going to get pulled. So it's one thing to just ask the LLM, is this a deal breaker for me? Like whatever question you're asking, like, does it have a Stripe integration or something? But it's another thing to have that information be very clearly pulled from one source on your website, so that one source makes its way into the more complicated queries, and not just making the LLM work so hard and prefer another company that has that information in a much more retrievable way. So that's kind of the as we peel back the onion on how to rank an LLM search, it's not straightforward, just like SEO is not straightforward, but there's kind of a different set of considerations you have to make.
Yeah. Just as you've like dived into that pool there, and I'm like, something that was kind of rattling around in the back of my head, that I've heard people chattering about, which is, is it more difficult now to do SEO than it ever has been, or is it easier? And I've heard people comment on both sides, like, oh, yeah, hell, it's much easier. The stuff that worked back in 2010 is working now. I'm like,
well, I mean, like, look, I do SEO or actually grow a business via SEO are kind of like debatable things, right? Like Jason
right.
Hennessy, you probably know, published a screenshot last week about how Google took out the click to call button on organic GMB listings or GBP listings, right? So yeah, like it might be, there might be some hacks that make their way back in, but we know that Google's going to make things like that harder. Whereas like obviously the paid ad has the click to call button, but your organic ad doesn't, right? But we also know that Google always continues to make it harder. And I mean, ChatGPT just doesn't give an F about helping you attribute your work, and the leads that you do generate, right? So, it also becomes harder for us to tie our work directly to the leads that get generated. And if you think about, LLM optimization, like you could track your presence in prompts, sure, and say like, look at what a great job we did by getting into this, our share of voice for a bunch of very similar prompts. But we that's not even like there's the reality of tracking prompts and your presence in prompts is that 2 companies could be tracking, bottom funnel prompts for the same product with slightly different wording, and both of them think that they're number 1 in share of voice. Whereas before, and I mean, sure, there's personalized results and stuff, but basically with SEO, we had a leaderboard, right? We had rank tracking. But now with, one without like prompt volume, and I don't care what some companies say in terms of we've got prompt volume, they really don't. This is a much more harder to attribute landscape than ever before. And I think that whether or not there's like hacks or keyword stuffing or, for example, one thing that a person could point to is like dates and recency. Just putting like, best whatever software, November 2025 in your title tag could help you get visibility. Like, sure, like things like that make their way back, but you also have to be really good at explaining the nuances of the reduced attribution that we're only going to continue to experience.
Yeah. It is really much more difficult right now to understand where traffic and conversions are coming from, I think, more than they've ever been. And especially when you're factoring in LLMs and trying to generate the traction there and actually get conversions. That's the bigger challenge as well, I think.
I
And
think,
at the end of the day, that's what a business wants, is not necessarily the ego of like, hey, we're, you know, the highest
share a voice or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, they want leads. They like, is my phone ringing? Do I have leads coming in the door? So
Well, I mean, like, one of the things I talk about, I'm teaching the course for CXL on answer engine optimization on the 22nd and 29th of this month. If anybody's interested in that, you could like Google Steve Toth AEO course CXL, and there's I'll give you a quick plug, is like, if you want 10% off, just use the code Notebook. But in that course, what I talk about is like, Google traffic was already the highest quality traffic on the web because of the intent, right? Like that is what made Google Google, because you
right,
got in front of that person at the moment you had their attention, right?
right.
But the thing is now with LLMs is like, you have their attention, but it's like SEMrush released a study that said that the LLM visitor is like 4 times more valuable than traditional Google user. That's because they've asked a lot of those like deal breaker type of questions, like is this the exact software that I want? So for us, for example, at Notebook Agency, like we wanted a software that had like a really good client, a project management software that had a really good client view. So client could come in at any time and see what work was going on and all that kind of stuff. And, that along with like a bunch of other features like budget and all that kind of stuff. And because we had that in-depth chat, or even if you do something like deep research where it really goes deep on trying to find you a solution, you kind of know that hopefully like all clients that satisfy those criteria, make it to the finish line and get recommended. And that's not always the case.
Right.
But users implicitly trust AI. And when it finds that, some companies do in fact like meet all of your criteria, when you go to their website, you're a lot more engaged that this is, a company that basically does all the things that you need it to do. So what we're seeing are people spending much longer session times coming from LLMs, because they've already, gone through, traditionally people would go through tons of different content, read reviews, watch YouTube videos, do all this pre-research once they finally end up on your website. Whereas like, all that is condensed down into a chat. So the funnel is now collapsed into that black box that we don't have any visibility into. But what we're seeing is that when the traffic actually does end up on your website, it's converting at a much higher rate. And people are spending longer, right? And that's because they've essentially qualified themselves. Now, like what I mentioned before about, not every, even if you put in all those different criteria, you might still not become the recommendation that you deserve, right? So, for example, like when we were looking at like a project management software with a client view, we our team member, narrowed down a list of project management softwares. And I said, where's Teamwork, right? Shouldn't, like, I've used Teamwork at a previous agency. It had all the features that we're looking for. And she was like, well, it wasn't in the final recommendation of the LLM. And that's because Teamwork didn't do a great job at creating information retrieval friendly content so that it was one of those recommendations, right? So really, like, there's also if unless you really dig into it, you might not really realize like what you're missing, and you might get left behind, but like we just have less visibility because In the past, we could very easily say, like, here's 20 keywords that are super important to us, and as long as we get good share of voice for these 20 keywords, we're going to do really well. But now it's like, we've really got, as a company, we really have to put our best foot forward in all areas of the business where we are strong, so that in these conversations that we have zero visibility into, we know that we're going to make it to the finish line more often than not. So, I think SEO, honestly, and like with this layer on top of it, got harder. And I believe that, every year in this industry, like, for the most part, it chews up and it spits out a lot of the people who are not, the ones who are innovating. And, there's a small group of us who are the veterans who stuck it out and innovated year over year, tested year over year, and failed and had hopefully more victories than failures. But I think that is only going to continue. And especially now with the rate of change that we're seeing in how we drive leads, it requires a whole new mindset. So those who follow AI Notebook and stuff like that, I feel like, I'm giving you all of my knowledge, like unrivaled, to help you adapt to this kind of stuff. And, obviously there's many people doing other things on their own, and there's a lot of other great people talking about this stuff as well. But, I feel like if this wasn't an industry where you had to be autodidactic and learn on your own time and teach yourself a bunch of things, that if it wasn't already that industry, which obviously SEO is that type of industry, it just increased like tenfold in the past 2 years.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think it is much more difficult. And you're talking about innovation and such, but it only just continues to underline, and I think not just in our industry, but I think probably in every industry, especially in today's world, you just got to continue to build your skill set and understand how you can utilize the tools like your LLM of choice, and how you can utilize those tools, try to understand how they are working, and then apply them to your particular industry. But I think in our world specifically, SEO has gotten, I think, because of this layer of LLM, and as you say, it's like kind of unknown. We don't have a high rate of visibility on what's going on in that aspect, and it makes it really challenging to.
I think also when people say that SEO is easy, it's almost like a subtle like brag for them or something. Not like a brag, but like a look at me, I was just ranked this like by snapping my fingers, like I'm now up on this pedestal, and you guys are all like I'm very skeptical of when people say that it just got easier. I mean, sure, like you made one, like you put a date in your title tag, and now you're getting more clicks. Like, can happen 100%. We should all look for things like that.
Right.
Like, also, is that a long-term fix? Is that just a short-term hack? Like, are you really adapting by doing that? Like, there's those who have been in this industry have seen things like that happen, but we're also we're parasites on platforms created by some of the smartest people in the world, right? Obviously, like, there's scientists and biologists and Nobel Prize winners who don't want anything to do with search engines or LLMs, but like, there's some very bright people behind these technologies, and where they're kind of adversaries, right? So there's never not going to be a cat and mouse game, but I think still, like, obviously, like, SEO is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and collectively, I believe we are more resourceful and ultimately smarter, or can outsmart climb the ladder, get knocked down, climb it again, like all that kind of, or the mountain, let's call it. But collectively, I think, we share knowledge with each other.
Yeah.
We test things, and we profit off of that, and we're able to have, livelihoods because of that. But I never look at like, Google as an easy to, manipulate, or like long, and I'm talking about long-term stuff, and also stuff that I do for clients. Like there's a lot of boundaries that, for short-term wins that I'm just never going to cross because of the types of clients that we work with. So I'm always thinking long-term, and I never look at, Google or any company like that as, I don't underestimate them, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Steve Toth, keeping it real. We're just parasites on the shoulders of these giants and LLMs. But all right, so I want to give some. Let me pull this screen up. I want to share this. Boom. Here we go. We got IRL showing.
SEO IRL, just so people want to Google it. But yeah. Yeah, that's coming up this week on Thursday and Friday. So we've got an amazing speaker lineup. You can kind of scroll down to show the speakers.
You gotta get this.
We're kicking off with Marie Haynes on Thursdays, our first speaker. There'll be people like Kevin Indig, Ross Simmons, Alyeda, Ted Kubitis, who a lot of your audience
love Ted.
JC is from TripAdvisor, super smart guy, very technical. Myself, Bree Moreau, who's just a wizard when it comes to data-driven data science and the data science behind, active link building. Jonah is just a magician who will actually be on the floor doing in-person magic. So
he really is a magician.
He's actually
a magician of business coaches.
Yeah, he's not going to be like on stage, but he'll just be circulating. And Martha from schema.app and Ian and Amin, and just the lineup this year is like super. I've worked really, really hard to put together the best lineup possible. So if you want to hear from people like myself, Ross, Alyeda, Marie Haynes, Kevin Indig, it's pretty much the biggest conference in Canada, and we're expecting a full house. So that's taking place this Thursday. So you've got 2 days. You got 1 day to buy a ticket and 1 day to get over here, pretty much. I'm looking forward to it.
Is it really Canada's largest event?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So
I don't know of any other one. So
Local U, I think, has been here in the past as well. And then there's been one called Inbound Con, and there's a few pockets here and there. Whether or not, like, I think we're the only one this year. Like, we're expecting over 200 people, so it's not a small conference. This is like our 5th time doing it. So we started it in 2022 when, at least here in Canada, COVID measures were fairly prevalent. So like there was a lot of still people masks and stuff like that, and most people in the corporate world were like 100% work from home at that point too. So it was a real opportunity to get people together. And then we've had, now this is our 5th event. So it's been really successful, and this year is the first 2-day event. So
I was going to say, because I remember when you launched it, it was really only like a 4 or 5 hour, like on a Thursday night or something like that. Like, hey, come from like 5 to 9 or something like that.
Yeah, those were the first 3 events. And we also had those all 6 months apart. So in about a span of a year and a half, we had 3 events every 6 months, and that was just a kind of a way to establish the community, get people reconnecting, and build the SEO IRL brand and awareness. And then last year was our first full day, and then this year we're doing 2 days.
Yeah. Do you think you'll expand even further as you're there?
It's not, honestly, it's not like it's not for, and not like, I think we're breaking even this year. Like, it's not something that I'm looking at as like expansion for business,
Yeah,
like revenue. So I doubt that we would do it more than once a year. But yeah, maybe at one day, like somebody will host their own SEO IRL conference under the brand, who knows? But
yeah,
it's not really, it's more for the community, and it's more for bringing something to Toronto, Canada, that, should exist, but maybe up until this point really hasn't. So,
yeah,
I'm in a fortunate position where I don't have to pay for a ton of ads to get the word out. I have the
yeah,
distribution on SEO Notebook and AI Notebook on and LinkedIn. So, as an introvert, I never thought that I would be running a conference, but here we are in our fifth one, and
yeah,
there's definitely nerves when you think about, like, just living up to people's expectations. Are things going to go smoothly? Are people going to like the talks?
mhm,
All that kind of stuff. But I guess you have to do things in life that make you uncomfortable sometimes. And I think on the road to success as an entrepreneur, there's many of those kind of hurdles that you have to jump. And this one is just kind of a big one for me. But I think when all is said and done and the conference is over, there's a tremendous sense of accomplishment
yeah,
and
yeah,
happiness that you feel because you were the team behind putting it all together.
yeah, yeah. Well, it just seems like such a natural thing for you, kind of as an extension of the notebook, and you know, you can leverage that subscriber base to help drive the kind of the marketing around, right? And so it's
Yeah,
like,
but
yeah,
this year, man, like this year, Ahrefs is holding a conference the same week, and in San Diego, like luckily not too close to Toronto, but still same week.
yeah,
And we're competing with Ahrefs Evolve being on the login page for Ahrefs. So, and even on, like, when you open Ahrefs tool, there's a big thing that says Ahrefs Evolve. So it's
yeah,
not like, this week is actually one of the worst weeks to hold an SEO conference, period. There's SERP Conf going on in Europe. There's Ahrefs taking place in San Diego. Rand Fishkin is holding a one-day event in Seattle, and SEO IRL is this week.
mm,
And it looks like there's just a few tickets left, and I'm certain that we're going to sell out today.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
like, it's not like it's easy. Yeah, it's
yeah.
not like it's easy. But yeah, we're very, very close to selling out, and usually, like, there's a big rush at the end, and I think
Right. Yep.
even like today, I think we're gonna sell out.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder as well, and I love, and I mentioned I went to the local U. It was in Nashville in September. I love the 1 day, or even like in this scenario with a 2 day, because we're all running our agencies, or we've got our involved businesses. And so, some conferences, that are like a week long, is like, wow, that's just a long time to be out, and
Oh, for sure.
everything just gets disconnected. And
As an
you know,
entrepreneur, especially, like, if you're in house, or even if you're, I think there's a lot. Yeah, that's an experimentation for us, right? This is our first
yeah,
thing, and definitely, like, in the survey we'll ask, like, would you prefer a 1 day or a 2 day event? Last
yeah,
year, people said that they wanted more. But yeah, that's obviously, like, even for me and my business, it's 2 days away from the keyboard. It,
yeah.
it can get, yeah, things get backed up and they get challenging.
Yeah. Well, and not only your business, but your family as well. I mean, I know you have family. It's like, okay, God, and it never seems, there's never seemingly like a great period of time. I have two kids, and my daughter's a senior this year, and so this is a really busy year for her. And I'm like, there's not really a great time for me to like step away at all, it seems like this year, because there's just something always going on kind of in my personal life right now. But I don't know. It is crazy. But
Best of luck to her and her big year next year.
yeah. Thank you. Are you going to Chiang Mai this year? I know you spoke last year. Are you going this year speaking again?
Yeah, I'm speaking. I spoke 2 years ago, and we'll be speaking
2 years ago. Okay. Yeah, that's a big trip. Speaking of big trips, right? Stepping out.
Yeah, there might even be a mastermind that I'm holding. I'm a little bit on the fence for it right now,
Nice.
but there might even be a mastermind on the Saturday after the conference. I'm just really debating whether or not I'm going to have the energy at the end of that week to do that. But essentially, there's like just I'm just always testing and excited about things, and there's basically like the opportunity to have like a full afternoon of just deep dives into this type of conversation, but for a much longer period with more questions and examples and walkthroughs and kind of a workshop format. So I'm just determining right now whether or not I want to do that. But if you are going to Chiang Mai and you want to see that, let me know. It might sway me to do it.
I did have tickets for this year, and it just like I too many things. So I was just sharing, kind of like crashing into my personal life. I'm like, okay, I can't do that. Next year, I'm hoping be both of my kids will be in college. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And life hopefully will be a little.
Well, I twisted my arm for my girlfriend to come with me this year. That's like,
nice. There you go.
Like it's much easier when I have like a travel partner.
Yes. But everything that I've heard in regards to Chiang Mai is that that's exactly what you're kind of talking about, these little offshoot masterminds, that happened, either before or after the conference, that a lot of great things going on, in addition to the conference with Diggity and everybody. So, yeah, that should be good. Well, I don't know. I would say do it, Steve. You're over there. You might as well, right?
Yeah, we've had a little issue with not being able to publish on the WOVA app, but that's the kind of crux right now is like, how do we get the word out? Because it's like, if you have SEO Notebook, you've got you can market and people can buy things anywhere, but like it's more of a matter of like reaching the right audience of attendees. So yeah, that's one of the issues.
Yeah. Well, listen, Steve, man, I appreciate you jumping on here. And I know this is a busy week for you with the conference coming up. And I'm really very humbled that you could jump on. I really appreciate it. And best of luck to you. I'm sorry I can't be there. Next year, I am there, definitely. So whether it's a 1 day, 2 day, or I don't know.
Yeah, it won't be more than 2.
So folks, be sure to go hit SEO IRL for the great conference going on this week if you haven't already. Also, go sign up. I have not signed up for your AI notebook yet. I got to do that. I'm going to do that as soon as we jump off of here. So go sign up for AI notebook. And if you're not part of SEO Notebook, go hit that one as well. Good stuff. And again, Steve, thank you so much. Next week, folks, join me. I've got Robbie Rizek jumping on the show. We're going to talk about he's doing some great things with AI video generation, but he also has a kind of a new project under his wing, and we're going to go do a deep dive on that. So little teaser for you there. Next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And again, thank you, Steve. Best of luck to you. Have great fun this week. All right.
Take care, and thanks for having me on again.
All right. Thank you, Steve. You bet.
Bye.
Everybody.